Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm in Florida now, accompanied by Paul Marcellini, and he's actually well known for some beautiful Anthurium hybrids. And of course, I wanted to show you guys that he's a lot more than that. So we're gonna get him to tell his life story, how he got here, and then we're gonna go through his wonderful garden with a lot of interesting plants that's at least 20 years old. If you're only here for the Anthuriums, we wouldn't be offended if you slide right to the timestamp where the Anthuriums are. But of course, we would appreciate it if you watch this from beginning to the end. So are we ready?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I was just one of those nature nerds as a kid, and I've done a little bit of everything from reptiles and tropical fish. But I got into plants about 3rd grade. Started with orchids and has just expanded from there, from ferns, begonias, palms, cycads, bromeliads, and I'm just a generalist. I've pursued the Anthuriums. I do love the Anthuriums a lot, and you know, visually they hit my criteria. I like variety, and that's what's great is just aroids in general, but even Anthuriums. There's just so much diversity, you know, from this to the pendants behind, and so it scratches that itch of wanting something new or wanting something different to add to the collection.
Cool. Has this always been your full-time job, just growing plants and breeding?
No, it's obviously been a passion for years, the plants, but I was a landscape photographer selling fine art prints from about 2010 until 2020. And I switched during COVID. That changed up my income, and I saw the way the plants were going, and I decided I'd just pursue another love and continue to be self-employed, which is definitely one of my biggest goals, is just to be able to do what I want.
That's awesome. What does your day look like usually?
One of my big things I like about being self-employed is I don't really ever have to set an alarm. But at this point, I wake up at 7:30. I'm out in the greenhouse by 8:30, checking on things, you know, pollinating what needs to be pollinated, maybe collecting berries on things that have ripened. Like I have this Dressleri down here that I'm actually behind on. Mm-hmm. And then I get to work, maybe repotting seedlings. On Mondays, it's my packing day, so I'm shipping orders all day long.
Wow.
And I don't have a set schedule. I just kind of go through the day and see what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. I wind down towards the end of the day. I work till about 10 o'clock at night right now, and I'll sometimes bring in a tray of seedlings and actually pot them up in the house and watch TV, or maybe my favorite YouTube star while I do that.
I don't see anyone else around this nursery or your garden. Do you have any?
No, it's just me. I guess it's a mix of being a control freak and also just constantly working, not wanting to take the time to train someone. But definitely I'm at the limit of what I can do.
Yeah. Does it get too much sometimes?
Yeah. You know, there's highs and lows. I mean, there's good weeks when you get really good customers that tell you how much they love the plants. Then there's, you know, bad weeks, or maybe you have a plant or you have some pest issues or fungal issues you have to take care of. But overall, yeah, I'm 4 years in, and I definitely still love the plants. I do want to figure out a way to manage my time better, but I'm not slowing down with the plants anytime soon. I don't really take visitors to the greenhouse just because it's so packed.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to navigate sometimes through here. So yeah, it's 99% online sales and shipping, mostly to the United States, but we've got my plants in Europe and Canada and Singapore, and it's kind of crazy. With my photography business, it was very much a niche market. I photographed Florida and mostly sold my prints in Florida. So now to have plants going around the world is it's a little crazy to think about.
Wow, that's really cool. And you guys, the viewers, are super lucky today because we're gonna show you a little bit inside his greenhouse. So before we get distracted by all these beauties around us, let's explore your garden and maybe show us some of the collections that you've been growing up to like 20 years or so. Wow, what is this?
So this is something we dug about 20 years ago. This is our natural water table here in South Miami. And we're about 6 feet below ground level. And you can see the native limestone. This is what we have to dig through if we ever want to plant anything.
Whoa, so everybody's homes look like this if you actually dig in.
Yep. Yeah. For most of South Miami, up until maybe Fort Lauderdale, it's all oolitic limestone, which is, we have about an inch of soil and that's it.
Wow, it's your passion. Like I know you do a lot of photographies in this freshwater type environment. What is the purpose of this environment right here? What are you planning to do with the space, or what was the idea?
Yeah, I mean the pond is what I wanted, just to have like my own little feeling of the Amazon. I put a bunch of Amazon fish in here, and I just, Miami's so flat, so the only way you can get some topography in your landscaping is to go down, or I guess you could build up a little bit again with the rocks. But that's the main thing I love is design, whether it's through my photography, designing the landscape into a photo.
This is a Impatiens mirabilis.
Mirabilis, and just starting to open.
Yeah.
But I've had it here for 2 years, and you can even see the little roots come down.
They are quite whimsical, actually, in their shape.
I believe, are they from Thailand?
I think they're from Thailand, yeah. And this one here, this is a begonia. They love these kind of...
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really wanted to do, is get more begonias that are used to the limestone from Asia.
They would love it here.
It was Sizemore. I believe they reclassified it as a subspecies of another species.
Cool. What is this right here?
This one?
What I think it is?
It's Zamia zocorum.
Okay.
Or Ceratozamia zocorum.
So these are all Zamias.
Yeah. This one is Turkhamii. This one has gone through a few name changes. It was Latifolia.
Yeah.
I've lost track of what it is now.
I see you do have a collection of cycads. You have a love for them, I guess.
I really am a generalist. I started with orchids, quickly went to ferns, and then palms. But bromeliads, begonias. Begonias is actually what got me going over to Tim Anderson's place the most when I was younger.
You did meet him.
His breeding, yes, back in the day. Yeah, I mean, it's just been a little bit of everything. The cycads is one of the newer things. About the same time, I mean, I've had aeroids for over 20 years, but my real explosion for aeroids was maybe 2018 when I really started getting back into plants, and that was the same time I started getting into the cycads. That's gonna be tricky in reverse. We planted this tree, and I love how these roots have come down, almost like a ficus, but it's not in that family at all.
This is actually very interesting. It looks like, the last time I've seen like roots like this, I mean, it's very reminiscent of like the Cambodia.
Yeah, the temples.
Have you been?
No, I have not been to Asia at all. It's really high on my list.
Yeah.
But I haven't gone anywhere in about a year. This was planted in 2002, give or take. And I'm a sucker for big leaves.
This is amazing. But do you breed with this or not?
Yeah, I have a few, it doesn't, or it may not, we're still figuring things out, but it doesn't seem to breed with the common velvet Anthuriums. This is, I believe, section undescribed, which is Mexican, mostly, and Mesoamerican. And then the velvets that we all love are mostly Cardiolontium, which starts in Panama or Costa Rica, Panama, and goes south.
Interesting. Bill was just telling me earlier that he managed to get 4 sections of them in one plant.
He's a wizard. And he's also had a lot more years of really focusing on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know of any direct crosses of Fausta mirandi with the Cardiolontium, but Bill has Clarinervium Fausta mirandi crossed with Ace of Spades, so that bridged the gap. And then I believe that plant is what he crossed one of the colorful flower Anthuriums with, so that would be, or that's 3, so I don't know how he got 4. Yeah, so this is Platycerium wandi. I was given it as a small little seedling when I was 17, so almost 23 years ago. I think it's been here maybe 20 years on this location, and I think this palm is probably gonna have to go, so it's gonna be a fun little project moving this, because it's, I think 10 feet top to bottom.
So the wanda is not one that would put out pups or anything off the side?
No, it's one of, I think, the 4 large species, Superbum, Grandi, Wandi, and Holtumii, are all the large ones that don't pup. And yeah, so you have to take care of it, because the growing point, if that gets damaged, that's kind of the end of it. And then the distinctive feature of wandi is the frills along the front. And then I believe it has a different spore pattern than Grandi. I think Grandi has 2 side by side. So this is also one of my prized plants, and I actually built this structure just to protect it from the falling Bismarckia fronds. After a few times of it almost getting sheared, I decided to spend a little time building that.
Is that a nobilis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I have a male and a female.
Oh.
So I get the seed production, which makes little bombs dropping from the sky.
I was just gonna say, so these are fruits?
Yeah.
What do you mean bomb dropping? So they fall violently?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can imagine that. I mean, this is already light, but you can imagine this size falling from 40 feet up.
Oh my gosh.
It can do some damage. I like this one more than Spiritus Sancti.
Oh.
To me, it's
I like that.
even sexier.
It's got these like nice ruffles.
Yeah.
And then, so it's super narrow.
Yeah, this is a select one that originally came from Ron Weeks, one of the old aeroid guys down here in South Florida. And he bred a lot of the thaumatophyllums or philodendron, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, is this a thaumatophyllum or?
So it was, I guess, philodendron section mechanostigma, and then it got separated out as a thaumatophyllum, and now it's apparently been lumped back to philodendron.
Good to know.
I'm used to calling it a thaumatophyllum. I'll still most likely call it that.
I like the sound of it, thaumatophyllum, but you can actually hybridize this with other philodendrons, correct?
As I have not heard of any cross-sectional or intergeneric hybrids.
How do you propagate them? Do you know?
So thaumatophyllums are a little harder to propagate than normal philodendrons because they have a much woodier stem. It's a slower turnaround time. So you can see here, I cut this in early spring 2 years ago.
Where's that cut?
And you can see the cut down there.
Oh, wait a minute, I do see it. Yeah, that right there.
And we have this new growth that came after 2 years. So
you gotta
not
be
the
patient.
fastest. But yeah, it's not like some of these philodendrons that you cut and it seems like you have a leaf 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So that's almost 15 years of fireball growth to get up there.
So they kind of clump on their own.
Yeah.
After, it was like a small potted plant, perhaps?
A few little pups someone gave us that we put down at the bottom.
That's really cool, and they'd kind of like hang down like this. It's asking us to propagate it. Then you said you had love for orchids.
Yeah, my first love was orchids. That's where a lot of my brain space has gone. And still love them. I do focus on the species a lot, but we've got a couple hybrids around.
It's gorgeous.
We got lucky because this only blooms once a year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so this is one of my select hybrids. It's narrow stenolobum times narrow stenolobum times bipennifolium.
Oh.
So it was first narrow stenolobum times bipennifolium, and then I crossed it back to narrow stenolobum, hoping to get a little bit better than this with the fingers, but still narrow. But, you know, it's something that I can keep working on.
Nice. And do you have a name for it?
No.
Okay. And I think these guys, they are a little bit trickier to pollinate because their flower stages are
Yes, so
tricky.
that cross actually took me 5 tries, 5 different blooms, because the first night is receptive, and then the second night is pollen. So you can never self one with just one bloom. So you have to save the pollen from the first bloom the second night, and then the next bloom, put the pollen on it the first night it's open. But then I had 5 tries, and the 5th one is the one that worked.
Nice.
All the other 4 aborted.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. And then they're tiny little seeds. Like, you have to spend so much time sifting through them compared to Anthurium seeds. But yeah, I was trying to find different looks for the local landscape here in South Florida.
Yeah.
Definitely not an indoor tent plant.
But this is not commercially readily or anything like that.
No. I have a friend I work with that does grow these various hybrids and things, and he offers them for sale. But other than that, not on a large scale. So this is a seed-grown monstera. My friend founded a wholesale nursery down here in South Florida, maybe 5 years ago. And it's just, I guess, a large form mint. We never really named it, but I know it has been sold around the world now. And I had just noticed the other day that we've got some blooms.
Does it ever self-pollinate or?
I'm not sure, but we have, you know, insects that will pollinate it, so I will definitely keep an eye on these.
Yeah.
I've been so focused on the Anthuriums, I hadn't even paid attention to this before.
Oh my gosh, this is fascinating. Actually, there's a little bit of the calcium deposit that you mentioned on here, but it actually looks nice. It looks very, very expensive now. It's like frosty.
And what I like is, you know, we're even getting a lot of sun here, and it doesn't really, you know, we get a little bit, but it doesn't burn like some of the higher variegations. And what it does is it starts this color, you know, very white.
Yeah.
And then as the leaves mature, the green comes through, and eventually the white turns to this light mint green.
That's beautiful. Actually, are all the leaves, this one here, sorry, does it have any green parts in it or not? Or it just hasn't appeared yet?
So this one, it does have a little bit of a deformity, but this, to me, looks like it's gonna end up looking like this leaf.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's actually very beautiful.
Yeah, and I think the leaves below, so these are probably, they started full mint as well for the most part.
Yeah, and then they kind of fade into that beautiful green. This is really amazing. Huh.
Yeah, so this is just some Peperomia rugosa AF, I believe, and I think there's a couple clones from various, you know, Ecuador and Colombia I've gotten from a few nurseries. This one has a little darker overall tone, and then of course the really rich red. This one's a little bit brighter, more chocolate on top.
Oh, that's beautiful. And peperomias, they do hybridize quite easily, I heard. So this is one of the most cinematic nurseries that I've been to, and it's like 90% Anthuriums, although there are other things here. Is that intentional?
Yeah, I obviously am a generalist, but this is my workspace and I don't want it to feel too sterile. You know, as a kid, I liked the nurseries where it was almost a scavenger hunt and you never knew what you might find under the benches. And I think Enid of NSC Tropicals always said, oh, I want to have cool weeds in my greenhouse. So it's kind of the same way, you know, I like to be surrounded as much as I can of it feeling like a jungle, I guess. And so typically plants are grouped in a certain way, but they're not all lined out and perfectly spaced. And you know, I like to have mixes of texture like this Nephrolepsis pendulifolium, I believe. And just, yeah, a little bit of everything. It's organized or not so organized chaos. So this is a pure Anthurium cuneolense. This is the one I call PM4 for Paul Marcellini. That's just my number 4 clone. I kind of have 2 types of cuna. This one is a little bit bluer green, and it, for me, doesn't have much color in the emergent, and it's more bullate, whereas some of the other cunas I have, like my PM5, my PM3, or they're almost more rippled, and they have a little more color in the emergent and not as blue-green.
Now, for the untrained eye, please pardon me, I'm not familiar with the numbers and the cuneienses. So you say PM134 is under your name, Paul Marcellini.
Yes.
But how are they different from the species in the wild?
Well, these are wild clones. I got them from Rory, so they're just, they're no different than one in the wild. So the clonal annotation is just for keeping track of things with breeding. And, you know, when you take divisions, people want a specific plant they've seen. Exactly. So it's keeping track of that.
All the cuneienses are one species, but how are they so diverse in the forms? Do you find them diverse, or did you selectively breed?
No, I don't think there's been much selective breeding of cuneolense yet. It's just in habitat, they're diverse. The same way a lot of other species, you know, Carla, again with the contrast venation, can have multiple patterns and shapes. I have a narrow Carla, I have really round Carlas. Papilla laminum is extremely diverse in its shape. Yeah, awesome. But if you look at them, a lot of these species, just the pure species, can be quite diverse.
And why? Why cuneiense? Out of all the Anthuriums, what drew you to them?
What I really love too are the petioles. This one might not be as unique as some of my other clones, but the ribbing on the petioles is just so cool to me. It's a nice little detail.
And they're very bullate, they're very round.
Yes, yeah, I like exaggerated details in my plants, whether it's really narrow or really round, just always some kind of trait that really stands out. You know, I'm always looking for the outliers in plants when I'm picking them out.
Sure.
You know, middle of the road, I'm usually gonna pass it by. I have one standout clone that has a really nice dark emergent, and that one I use to breed next generation plants. Clone is a complicated word in the hobby now because it's been used and misused. It's been used to just imply that a plant is wild just by calling it a clone. But unless it's a batch of tissue cultured plants, every plant is genetically a separate clone.
Even in cuttings?
Well, cuttings would be a clone of the mother plant.
Right.
So that's why you need to denote the plant's clonal name or number. That's why you have to keep track, because when you take a division, it is identical to the mother plant.
Correct.
So you want to keep track of them. Typically, I'm only numbering or naming standout plants because I want to keep track of their parentage in their hybrids, or because I've divided them because people want them, and I have to keep track of the offspring that I've divided. So yeah, there's a lot of plants that just aren't probably not worthy of any kind of name. You know, when I'm going through a collection and getting the plants for myself, I'm looking for the outliers that might not be the best representation of the species. I'm looking for the unique ones for my breeding program. So maybe some of my plants are a little different than what you could expect. Maybe, you know, the blue-green of this clone is a little more than normal. You know, maybe the bullations on the leaves is a little more than average. Yeah, I might not be the best example, but I was someone that got my pictures of my plants out there a lot. And I think, I mean, I wasn't trying to, other than I love the species and love to share pictures of it. But I think that really raised awareness, and people saw my plants more than other plants and just gravitated towards those clones of cuneiolents because I had more pictures of them out there.
Yeah, and clearly when I'm trying to look up the species earlier on my way over, literally all of the Google image results had your name on it. So you're doing a very good job at, you know, kind of naming them and kind of not categorizing them, but differentiating one from another. And I did see that chart that you're talking about, so we're going to insert that.
Oh yes, a friend did that, Mike, I believe.
Yeah, that's very helpful for people to see, so they know what they're getting when they're looking out for one. Wow, this is sitting in full water.
Yeah, cuniolents, they really love water, and especially in the summer with the heat, I like to provide as much as I can.
Yeah.
They grow by rivers in Panama, and just, they definitely don't seem to mind extra water at all.
That's amazing, but you also have a very porous potting media.
Yeah, so I've had to figure out the balance. I've grown Anthuriums many ways over the last few years. And at least in the plastic house in Miami, I get up to almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's about 30 Celsius. And it's just too hot for these plants. Then even in Central America where they grow, they're not typically exposed to that high of a temperature. So to mitigate that, I have to water more. My main watering is at 6 a.m. for 20 minutes. And then I have to water 4 times a day, every hour and a half through the hottest part of the day. And because of that, it drops the temperature and raises the humidity. I've had to find a potting media that drains extremely well so I don't get any root rot because of how much I'm watering. So it's all finding the balance that works for you. You can grow these in peat moss and, you know, water them a whole lot less. But I can't do that because then I would have to water less and I wouldn't be able to mitigate the humidity and the temperature.
Nice. And did you say what the potting media is that you use?
It's a custom mix and it's always evolving a little bit.
Okay.
But the core mix of my potting media now is pumice, zeolite, and what is it?
Take your time.
Yeah, man, I can't think of it. Pumice, zeolite.
Do you want to look at it to see? Perlite? No.
No, that's, I mean, I used to have perlite, but now I switched to pumice.
But these are slow release fertilizer, right? The silver things.
Yeah, because I don't have
time. It's a generous
time.
amount, though.
Yeah, it's 270 day slow release. Because I just don't have enough time to foliar feed as much as I want to. Pumice, staylight. All right, so this is Stripey X1, and I'm getting messages about this almost weekly. This is a plant I found in a nursery that had various duck block plants, and I believe it's a Black Widow hybrid, so that's why I named it X1, because Black Widow is a stripy derivative, and stripy came from Tim Anderson. And the X1 is just like hybrid 1 because it's technically a no ID. We don't know for sure, it didn't have a tag, but we can assume some things based on its looks, and it's just, you know, dark and got those radiating veins, and yeah, definitely one of my favorite plants.
So did Tim Anderson stripey look like this originally or not?
It was a lighter plant. I believe the venation was similar, a little more contrast in it, more green tones. The duck block Black Widow Michelles that have a similar look, but because he's not the best at always keeping track of things, especially when he's using wholesale growers, and this was one of them that was a batch at the wholesale grower that had no tag.
Okay. This one that you labeled X1 has slightly different characteristics.
Yes.
And then that's why it's deserving a name X1. Now there's another one called the X2.
Yes, and X2, as we'll see, is even more similar to some of the better clones of Black Widow Michelle. As the Black Widow Michelle cross had everything from a Michelle-looking plant to a radiating venation, you know, definitely showing the Black Widow traits more. This is Stripey X2, which was a sibling in the same unnamed batch as Stripey X1. So just I handpicked them, they caught my eye.
Yeah.
And I just named them the same, you know, it's like Stripey Hybrid 1, Stripey Hybrid 2, and I just shorthanded the X like it's doing across.
Okay. But these ones, they were found in a batch of seedlings?
Seedlings that a wholesaler had,
yeah,
and the tag had been lost.
Okay.
So I'm not going to try to name them what they might be. I'm just going to give them unique clonal names.
Yeah.
And they are what they are.
Okay, and they are also sought after.
Absolutely. People are definitely wanting them for, yeah, I think for breeding, because this stripy type trait in the venation coming through is very recessive.
Okay.
So even buying a seedling that's unproven, you have a very low chance of getting this to come through with the current breeding. I'm hoping to turn that recessive trait into a dominant trait through back crossing, but we're talking a year or two away.
Interesting. And in case you audiences were wondering why I'm asking such basic questions, I am not an Anthurium expert by any means. So I'm really grateful to be here to get some clarity on some of these. But again, some of you requested to see the Stripey X1 and X2 and also the
Stripey Mag?
Stripey Mag.
But again, this is a plant I got a few years ago. It originally came from Doc Block's collection. It didn't have a tag. It was called Stripey Mags, so I assume it's Stripey crossed with Mag, but I've since just named it Stripey Mag for simplicity. And yeah, the unique venation, the upright growth habit has really appealed to me. I love breeding with it because for the most part, this is a trait that comes through in some of the hybrids.
And as a magnificum, it does size up more?
Yes, it is a more robust plant. It has the ridged petioles like a magnificum. And here you can see also it's got some nice color to the emergent.
Oh, gorgeous.
Do you know circus peanuts?
Yes.
So this is completely unrelated other than how it looks. And because Swamp Trash is my brand, you know.
What do you mean? That's the name of?
Well, my company is Understory Oasis.
Yeah.
But if you knew, you know Jay Vanini and Arthur. Oh, that's even better. Jay Vanini is a highly regarded Anthurium grower and kind of one of the originals that people were clamoring for his plants at very high prices. And someone who's not really relevant in the Anthurium world anymore was exporting his plants for him a lot. And basically, we got into it a little bit, and he said that I was selling trash from the swamps, being down here in South Florida. And so I decided to run with it, and now hashtag swamp trash is kind of my brand, branding. But because of that, I made a hybrid that looks very similar to circus peanuts, even though it's not related genetically
at all.
And so I named it Swampy Nuts. This is Dark Ace times Stripey Mag Carla.
And it's variegated.
Yes, and the Stripey Mag lineage seems to throw maybe 10% variegated out of a lot of the hybrids.
But then the parent plants, are they variegated or not?
No.
Oh, but they just variegate on their own.
But I've noticed over lots of hybrids that the Stripey Mag does like to promote variegated seedlings.
That's funny. But what do you think overall of variegated Anthuriums? They're big in Asia?
Yeah, I'm picky. I don't particularly like yellow.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I'm biased because I produced it, but I like the minty variegation like this because it doesn't typically crisp or burn off like the sectoral variegation. Yeah, I like the pinks. I do like the pinks and the bright whites, but I am picky in the ones I like.
I think you guys in the States are more inclined towards the dark leaf. So that's where the heavy emphasis is.
Yeah.
And also the forms. You guys are obsessed about different forms of them.
So this one is pumpkin spice. It's one I named. It's a stripy mag hybrid, and this leaf is now hardening, but
It's not fully hardened yet.
yeah, it'll continue to go green. But I named it pumpkin spice because since it is minty variegated, it emerges very bright orange.
Lingerie, or what is this?
Yes, yeah, that's, and it's definitely the spiral inflorescence is what everybody likes.
They're actually very common here, but for us in Indonesia, I've never seen one.
Really?
So it's weird. I don't know why.
So this is the true Bessier, and it's from Bolivia. I was lucky to get a piece from the European collection. The main form in the United States is clumping, and it doesn't grow as well, doesn't get as large of a leaf. And as you can see here, this one has a scandent growth habit. So it has a long creeping rhizome, and it's put out one pup, but as you can see, it's only 2 growth points. What I love is it has the emerging leaves unroll like a scroll.
Oh.
So that's had the classification of what section it's in bounced around a little bit. And yeah, it's definitely different than the average Cardiolontium Anthurium.
And it's probably a good candidate as a mother plant for this one.
Yeah.
Do you breed with this?
So I've crossed this with the section Cardiolontium, but I've also crossed it with the bird's nests, the section Pachyneurium. So maybe it's a bridge species, or maybe one day we'll get it settled where it needs to be.
But it's that seed, and it's...
Yes, I have seedlings from both hybrids, so.
Interesting. So you will be expecting some interesting hybrids from you, I guess, in a few months.
Yeah, well, I already have those hybrids, but that's another interesting thing, is most of the Cardiolontium plants like Carla, on average, the seeds take 3 months to mature.
Yeah.
The true Bessier takes almost a year.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that's another thing that makes it similar to the Pachyneurium. The bird's nests take a long time as well.
Yeah. Is this a Carla?
Yes, this is the one. I got it from Rory as it's a seedling from his RA5, the Spider Carla. So this one, I have a few of them from him. So this is my PM3.
Okay. Interesting. So you have some Carlas and PMs as well.
Yeah, sometimes I put the PM, sometimes I just put a number. But it's just to, I'm not trying to really put my name on things. I just have to keep track when I'm breeding or dividing the
It really is a guideline for yourself.
Yeah.
People are welcome to use as a reference.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So Carlas also have a lot of different forms.
Yeah, so you can see we'll put these two side by side.
Sure, that really helps me out. It's a newbie for...
Yeah, so you can see these are both pure Carlas. Yeah. This is a wild clone. I call it Yard because it used to grow in my yard. It's the first one I got from Rory.
Yeah.
It's very narrow. And then you have the PM3, which is a lot wider. Yeah. They also vary in the size of the spathe, which is what makes Carla so famous. This one is one of the largest I've seen. Rory has some that have been even larger.
Wow.
But as you can see, this spathe on the PM2, while large, is also a little different. So there is diversity in the species.
Interesting.
In both flower and leaf.
But then genetically, there would be
they would both register as Carla genetically, yes, but they are separate plants. So this is another one. There's a few examples here, but this is my Circus Peanuts times Carla, and it's my number 7 clone.
What does that mean, number 7 clone?
Just keeping track, you know, I got maybe 9 seedlings out of the cross. Circus peanuts always usually makes low yields.
Yeah.
And so just keeping track, because as you can see, this is my B clone, because I forgot what I had started with, numbers or letters.
Yeah.
But these are siblings, and they're quite different.
Now I see why you have to, you know, kind of segment it to kind of give them
Because
numbers.
if I make hybrids with this one, it's Circus Peanuts Carla times something, and I could make this, use the same parent, but this hybrid, and I could have vastly different offspring.
Yeah.
So it's like if you had a blonde sister, you know, it's very different.
Yeah. This really explains things a lot. But hang on, before we even get there, you said there are like 8 of them, but then when they set seed, there's actually hundreds of them that you actually have to weed out a few.
Yeah. So I mean, this one, just because Circus Peanuts is not the most prolific breeder, I didn't get the choice in weeding them out. I was given 8 seeds, so I kept all 8 from the cross. But the next generations from this, some of them I do get 100, and depending on how excited I am by what it might be, is how many I might try to keep for myself for forever.
Sure.
But what I am breeding with this, what I like, is the Carla was influenced in the flower. So we have a larger space, but we got some color. And another clone I have has an even bigger bubblegum space. And that's what I've been breeding back to other Carla genetics to try to have different leaf colors and shapes with that nice pink color on the flower as well.
So what are some of the traits that you consider sexy? Like, for example, emergent veins, like what are some of the things that...
I do actually like a little color. And I like, maybe it's just because it's not around as much, you know, the crystal mag types have so much contrast venation that I like things like this, where I've kind of worked a reduced contrast venation into it. So I still have some, but it's not as hectic, you know, or especially things that are easier for the eye to digest, you know, the linear patterns. And so I think that's, with a lot of people, maybe that's why the stripy type things are so popular right now, because there's less random look to it, perhaps, and definitely more symmetry and pattern recognition. I like purples and pinks personally, so that's why I've got that batch up front that maybe we should look at. That's a lot of holdbacks of Ace of Spades hybrids.
How long have you been breeding Anthuriums?
Intentionally, 4 or 5 years. You know, I've had probably some hybrids with the bird's nests that grow in my yard for dozens of years. And I've raised them up as a kid, but obviously there wasn't a lot of diversity, so not much difference between the seedlings I had and my mother plants. So this is Stripey X1 times my Bessie AF narrow clone, I call it. And this is the standout seedling. But as I've learned, the stripy genetics, you know, this whole parallel veins, and it's very recessive. And so 95% of the siblings of this plant did not look like this.
So this is a one that's like a black sheep, you would say, in the...
Yeah, it's the black sheep that I've been looking for. So this whole batch, a couple of these trays are all Stripey X2 times Carla. And there are a few plants that are definitely catching my eye. There's a few that probably won't make the cut. But then you get a plant like this that's really standing out and getting me excited.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That middle vein is weird.
Yeah.
Interesting.
This is something I'm looking for. You can see the nice parallel lines that are unbroke, no secondary venation.
Yeah.
And this right here is the bane of my existence with breeding, is when these two show up, because it just breaks the continuity and the look of the leaf.
It just looks like a more common Anthurium.
Exactly. So I'm trying to create something that's a little bit new and stands out.
Okay.
That, again, the stripy gene, it's in another unknown plant that I call Enid's Bench. I got it from NSC Tropicals as an unknown hybrid.
Yeah.
Definitely has some kind of stripy traits, but I did Enid's Bench to Bessier. 95% of the plants didn't look like much, but we got this one to come through with that same venation that everyone really likes. Here's a nice collection I've been holding back. These are Ace times Stripy Mag Carla, and some of my select ones for either color or possibly here some different patterning in the contrast venation. But this is definitely, this dark, sexy maroon is a color that I'm personally attracted to. And
Awesome.
yeah, so you can see I'll keep at least a dozen of my cross to try to find the best ones for breeding the next generation.
So not all of these are gonna make it.
No, I'm
Maybe a beauty
continuing to
contest.
grow them, but yes, and maybe I'll use multiple ones for different traits going forward, whether this one is for the color and the other one is for the patterning of the contrast venation.
Yeah.
I try to pick and choose my parents and blend them together based on what I'm hoping the traits will be picked up from both parent. But of course, you always get a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So this is the second shipping container, and this is where, after I've pulled the seedlings out of a community pot, they all live their life for 4 to 6 months perhaps. And each one of them gets their own little mini greenhouse in here.
Cool. Can I ask your favorite?
I'm excited for these right now. They're Fairchild Crystal times Stripy Mag.
Is it FTG that everyone
Yes.
is looking out for?
So, you know, a plant like that.
Oh, that's that stripe that you find sexy.
Yeah. And then this one as well.
Cool.
So yeah, these have just gotten going, but I'm excited to see them in a few more months. And then the newest one that I don't know if anyone has even heard about it yet is the Stripy X1 times Stripy X2.
Awesome.
And they are just starting to get going themselves. And already getting a little color to the emergence. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how these develop.
Yeah, well, by the time this video comes out, it will be 4, 5, or 6 months from today. So this might have been sold out even. Well, be on the lookout for this. Hound him if you are looking for some of these. And I do have one last question for you. Now, I've met a few Anthurium growers, despite me being a newbie at Anthuriums. A lot of them have their own preference as to which parent plants they favor. Can you name me your top 3 favorite parent plants that you have been hybridizing with that it's kind of defines you as a breeder?
Obviously Stripy Mag for the contrast venation and the pattern and the upright growth habit. Carla Blackie is just an amazing parent. It's hard to make an ugly cross when Carla Blackie is one of the parents. And I like Circus Peanuts hybrids a lot, maybe just because they take a little more work. You know, it's a lower yield, but again, it's a big plant and it seems to make some sexy hybrids, you know, next generation stuff as well. All right, so even though this is where a lot of my seedlings start, I believe this is the end of the tour. So thanks for coming along and seeing everything I have.
Thank you so much, Paul. I learned a lot in this trip. Really appreciate it. And give Paul a follow here in case you haven't done so. And I guess I will see you in the next one.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. you.